All right, we're live.
Okay.
Okay, this is Mac Boland of IllinoisMatmen.com, and we are doing a podcast, kind of a preview. If everything goes right, we want to do like these on a weekly basis. I'm joined here by our rankings guru, Rob Sherrill, also of Illinois Best Weekly, and does the GEI sponsored rankings for Illinois Matmen. If you want it, go earn it. So real quick then, Rob, I want to go back to last season just, briefly. Class A, we had Dakota win their fourth straight championship.
Right. I had a great time kind of focusing on the 1A duels last year, and they were fun to watch. It was fun to watch Dakota kind of navigate their way around the holes they had in order to win those three duels at the U.S. Cellular Center, particularly the final.
Oh yeah, the Coal City duel was brutal.
Over
yeah,
Coal City
it was a good one.
Right after they moved Nathan Olson up two weight classes. They moved Wenger up two weight classes. They both got from the individual state, and both those guys got huge wins in that 31-30 win over Coal City. So, it was not necessarily the stacked Dakota teams of the previous 3 years, but Pete Albert found a way to put the pieces together in a way that got them 4 in a row. It was fun to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, great moves, and that boils down to the great coaching job that he's done. And it's kind of funny because I contrast that with earlier in the season. When I was at the Clash and his team was taking an absolute beating the first day or so, and come towards the end, though, of course, they figured it out and managed to prevail. And then now going to Class 2A, I hate to say unfortunately, but, we had the marquee matchup occurred in the semifinals, of course, between Mount Carmel and Washington.
Yeah, I think what Washington did last year was really one of the singular accomplishments in any class in the last few years. I think I may have been the only person who thought from day one on that Washington had enough to win this thing.
Oh, I did
too. So I think some other people may have, but when you look at Mount Carmel coming down from 2A and the progress that Marian Catholic made over the course of the season, certainly, there are a lot of people that thought that Mount Carmel, with their balance, would find a way to pull this out. But Washington really had the tough road at the state. They had to beat Mount Carmel. They had to beat Marian, and I think they got a lot of confidence for the dual state from their performance at the individual state, because
sure,
they if they'd kept team score at the individual state, it turns out Washington would have won very close, and at the dual state, Washington won very close. But you go back and look at some of those at all the key matches, Washington won all of them.
Yep,
and they're obviously a testament. If you're wondering the value of off-season wrestling,
Amen.
You look at that team with 11 guys in the lineup who've been Fargo place winners. If you're wondering whether you ought to do it, you might want to look at them and say, yeah, maybe I should do it.
Yeah, and the thing is, Mount Carmel had a phenomenal season that year. I mean, that literally Washington handed them their only dual team defeat the entire season.
That's right. And Mount Carmel really had the best dual team probably in the field, but they just didn't have enough of those top line guys to to win those key matches against Washington.
And and there were
you could see it at the individual state
sure.
when they first took a lot of hits in the quarterfinals. Then they took a lot of hits in the semifinals, and they had a lot of those sort of third, fifth place guys, and those kinds of guys were just not enough to win against Washington.
Right, and Washington, had guys. Mount Carmel tried to make moves, to get around Menoweather, which didn't work, and
right,
and come towards the end, they just forfeit. Jacob Warner wasn't even a factor. And I mean, he didn't even need to. He didn't need to be. And Washington really upped their game last year too. Going back, they jumped back into the Ironman Clash first time. I mean, they wrestled a really brutal schedule, and to be fair, Mount Carmel did too. And Mount Carmel won a Chicago Catholic League championship, which this year included Marmion Academy and Montini. And to be fair, Mount Carmel was right up there, regardless of class, when you talk about the top 4 or 5 teams in the entire state.
Absolutely, no question about it. And both those teams were, you look at Washington with their 2 wins over Marmion.
Yep.
In the space of about 9 days apart. So they proved very early on that that they deserved to be where they were ranked at, and the Ironman was a big help to them. It was a big help to all the teams that went there. And I think the lesson that you learn from the Iron tournaments like the Ironman is team scores are interesting, but they really don't provide an accurate picture of who the good teams are. It's it's what happens individual that provides the most accurate focus. A lot of those teams didn't enter full lineups, and
sure.
Some of them brought their good guys. When you see a team finish 16th or a team finish 19th or 20th or whatever, you can really just throw that out. You just have to kind of look at what the guys that they brought did, how they did against competition that was available there, and those are the important lessons that you take from the Ironman, other than did I finish in the top 10 or not.
Yeah, and actually, continuing on that theme, you go to Class 3A and you look at Oak Park River Forest early in the season, kind of a makeshift lineup at the Ironman, dealt with a lot of adversity. Even at the Clash, I hate to use the word struggled to a third place finish, with the lineup. But then you look at the lineup that they faced Marmion Academy with at the end of the season, and they pummeled them. I mean, they pummeled Marmion Academy.
I think it just shows that with things like get down dates and that kind of thing that we're subjected to these days, how meaningless in the end game picture the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season are. You're really just kind of feeling your way around. And when you go to a great early season tournament like the Ironman, some things about your team, but if you don't do well as a team, or if a guy takes a couple of losses you don't expect, well, you still got 2 months, or almost 2 months to deal with the effects of those, and to put some kind of plan in place to recover from that. And that's one of the good things about the Ironman being at the time it is. Obviously, it's for the team that wins it, or for the team that finishes in the top 5, it's something they can look at and gain some confidence from for the rest of the season. But on the other hand, it does create some expectations. And if you don't do so well, you can look at it and say, well, we knew we were going to have some things to work on these last 6 to 8 weeks of the season. Now we could go work on those things.
And you go back a couple of years, when St. Paris Graham won the Ironman, yet then turned around at the end of December and got clobbered by Blair in a dual meet.
Sure. Well, I mean, those, a dual meet's an entirely different thing.
Different animal.
Lineups are different. Teams are moving guys around to try to win the duel. It's you can always ask whether that's a true reflection of what kind of team they are. But a dual meet is team against team, and it is what it is in terms of determining how strong one team is against one other team.
Yeah,
and that's what Blair was able to accomplish that day.
Yeah, and now looking, speaking specifically Illinois, and something that I know both you and I kind of see eye to eye on, and a lot of coaches have a lot of issues with when we talk about, again, going back to last year, regional assignments, where you have in Class 3A, two of the top 5 or 6 teams in Montini and Lyons Township placed in the same regional.
Right.
And then you look at sectionals that are decided both individual and team by random drawing. And
it's going to be worse this year with Mount Carmel being in 3A.
Back
They're
in 3A,
sure. Into that same mess. And Marian Catholic's, of course, is going to join the Lockport and Providence folks most likely. And so the strongest 2 sectionals are in Lincoln Way West, of course, is going to join that same group.
In Lincoln Way West,
the strongest 2 sectionals are going to get even stronger.
Oh, it's going to be brutal. And, you kind of want to say, well, come on, at some point, logic needs to take over and kind of spread this out a little bit. And, last year, you have Carl Sandburg, which is south and could have easily been put down south, but they sent him to Batavia. And, I mean, and this is something, again, they say, oh, well, it's regional, but, well, no, it's not really regional. And all those teams like in the Quad City area ended up down south when they could have easily been at Batavia, which probably would have made more sense.
Yeah, I'm sure TF South and Stag didn't enjoy being sent to Batavia either. But you got that group of teams that always seems to be sent to the same place.
Yeah,
because generally it's either Marist or Sandburg that hosts.
Yeah.
So that kind of factors into the equation. It actually. We're actually sort of an outlier in Illinois in the fact that we don't have permanent boundaries for districts or regions or anything like that, as they do in really just about every other state. I think you look at us and you look at Wisconsin and maybe Indiana, and really
in Pennsylvania.
That's about it. Pennsylvania has permanent districts, and you got to kind of move heaven and earth to get moved to another district. For any reason, they're strictly geographical. And but on the other hand, there are multiple qualifiers out of each of those districts to their team state, and they are separated on the brackets as they go. But there are some, you see matchups prior to the finals in Pennsylvania that I'm sure they don't like to see.
Sure. So, and again, like on the sectional drawings, like, you end up with Sandberg and Marmion Academy meeting in a team sectional when you're talking about two of the best teams in 3A. And at some point, we can only hope that down the road logic maybe prevails and they can fix this. Again, I say hope because it's not basketball or football.
I think thanks to some of us working with the advisory committee, this is going to continue to be an issue that is discussed at the committee meetings and with the board every year. And we do have a couple of people on the board that are that are former wrestling coaches and are very sympathetic to where we're going with this. Problem is they don't have the numbers on the board right now, so that's still a one of our challenges working with from last year to this year to future years. But the good thing that I see is that I think Craig Anderson is now sympathetic to the situation we find ourselves in. And for those of you who are who are listening, this is more. This is something that you have to talk about with your IHSA reps. This is more than just an issue of who gets sent where. Mm-hmm. Team dual wrestling is one of the bracketed team sports that the IHSA has. Every bracketed team sport has seating except for dual wrestling. It's now become an issue of general fairness in terms of what protections are due dual wrestling that are given to the other bracketed team sports: basketball, volleyball, baseball, softball, football, that we are not getting. So it's kind of the problem with dual wrestling is that from an IHSA assignment standpoint, it is not on an even playing field with the other IHSA bracketed team sports. And that is the first thing that we have to accomplish.
Amen. Okay, now going to this season. Okay, yes. Just some of the key events we've already had. I guess, we could look at the two early season tournaments we had. Sandberg won the Chris Huska Memorial Conan Tournament, and Marmion Academy won the Moore Prettyman in Barrington. So, they early season, tough tournament, even though, admittedly, Sandberg probably took some pretty serious hits comparatively, to some of the other 3A programs. They're really good up top with Brucky, Bateman, and Skates. I actually got a pretty decent 106-pounder too, but a young team. And, Marmion Academy winning the Barrington tournament. And then, of course, we had an early season duel that definitely has some 3A impact with Lockport with a win over 38-20 over Mount Carmel.
Yeah, that was a great duel. And, I think in terms of what that match showed is the depth that Lockport has. Mount Carmel is going to be a great team from 126 through 170. Outside 126 on the bottom and 170 on the top, they're going to be scrambling to cover some of those holes. I think they have a better chance of doing it on the low end of the lineup than on the top end of the lineup. But I think we did see the depth of Lockport there, and I think they're it's something that the other teams even in 3A are going to are going to have some issues trying to address.
Yeah, and going into this season now, let's start with Class A. Do you think Dakota's still the favorite to repeat?
Well, I've been pleased by what I've seen from Dakota so far. I have my doubts about them. I think if you put a gun to my head, I think it's between Lena Winslow and Coal City right now. But you have to be really impressed at Dakota coming over to New Trier and scoring those 2 3A wins that I didn't think they were going to be able to pull off. Trier and Schaumburg, obviously. They won only 2 matches against Oak Park.
It's a little bit different.
Which is about what I would expect they would have won under the best of circumstances.
Yeah.
But anybody can lose to Oak Park 59-7. That doesn't diminish what Dakota is. I think they're going to be a team that we're going to see in that really tough stretch in January that they have, how well that builds them. It was really important for them the last couple of years, that stretch, starting with the Princeton tournament. Then they went on, of course, to wrestle Montini and Lincoln Way Central, and as well as Lena Winslow and Byron in their own area of the state. And that's kind of how the schedule sets up for them again this year. And I think they're going to take some losses, but it's if anything is going to prepare them, that's it. And I think Pete has made it really clear that no matter what he's got returning, his expectations for that program are really high.
Absolutely, and that's why I thought, like last year, going to the Clash was a great move for him, even though they took an absolute beating. But it was a good eye-opener for him.
Sure. And, he did I thought who he wrestled the second day, he got a chance to wrestle a couple of the 1A programs from Minnesota.
Sure.
That are sort of that you would consider sort of equivalent to them. And he lost a couple. I think he did win one.
Yeah.
But that kind of competition was very good for him.
Absolutely, and it showed, because by the time they did get to state duel, they brought their A game and won that tough duel against Coal City, and he made and as we said before, he made the right moves. Going on to 2A now, they just had too much. They just had too much big match experience. Absolutely. And going on to 2A now, let's talk about Washington again. Won their first 2A championship. Even if Montini had been in 2A, honestly, I still think Washington would have beat them.
I think Montini would have had everything they could have handled from Washington last year.
Absolutely. And even though I got to say this, I got to hand credit to Izzy, because the team he showed up with at the end of the season, he filled a lot of the holes that he had in the early season. I mean, for them to make it to win that regional with Lyons Township in it, and to make it to the Elite Eight, and actually give Marmion Academy a pretty good dual meet was very impressive. But I don't think they could have beaten Washington last year, regardless if they'd have been 2A.
This year now, just to fill in, this year on Washington, they have made, of course, one trip to the suburbs already. Got a couple of big wins, one of them over Barrington by a score of 45-18, and Barrington is a top 23A team. So
absolutely,
not only they're certainly not the Washington of last year, but with the obviously with the defections from 2A to 3A, the way has kind of been cleared for them. And even though they will again be in the toughest sectional at the end of the year, It's hard for me to see a team that is going to really go with them. And of course, unfortunately for Bloomington, if they wind up in the same regional with them again, that I don't know what the regional hosts are going to be. Hopefully, Bloomington gets sent the other way, but if they're not, that'll be another team taken out of the running early.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Now, Lincoln Way West. When you talk about defections, are they 2A or 3A this year?
They're 3A. There's only 3 Lincoln Way schools now
because of the breakup.
Right, because now Lincoln North is no longer a school.
Right.
They closed at the end of last year, so you have 4 schools into 3. And actually, the way it worked, students wound up at East. Some of East's kids wound up at West and at Central. They East lost Benedetto to West, and they and they also lost Jason Stokes to Central. And on the other hand, Lincoln Way Central lost Jake Dudek, the state place winner, to West.
Well, and the great irony in this is...
So West got a little richer as a result of Benedetto and Dudek coming in. But actually, Tyrone Bird's pretty happy about what he got from North, and he thinks that's kind of offset what he lost to Central and West. So we'll see. Dylan Conway, of course, is at East now. Who was North's best wrestler last year. So. And he's Kevin Rocket, who was North's head coach during the time that they were open, is now on Bird's staff at East. Brett Geyer, the former Homewood Flossmoor head coach, now also on Bird's staff at East. So I think things are going to work out pretty well for them.
Well, the great irony is, though, Lincoln Way West, on the one hand, benefits, like we said, from Benedetto and, of course, obviously Jake Dudek. But then on the other hand, now they're no longer in 2A, they're in 3A. Whereas if they were still in 2A with their current lineup, they're a top team.
Well, they in a week from tonight, I believe, they wrestle Lockport. So we're going to see where they stack up with Lockport this early in the season. It's certainly possible they're obviously in the same sectional. Whether they're they're probably not in the same regional, but we'll see if they're on the same side in the sectional or whether they're separated. But we'll learn a lot from that match next week.
Sure. And again, just going real quick back to offseason, the coaching changes. Okay, we had John Kading, who did a great job at Mount Carmel. They finished 3rd place last year, but we're probably the 2nd best team. I mean, behind Washington. Nothing against Marian Catholic, but there's no way Marian Catholic's beating Mount Carmel in a duel. He moves to Leiden, and I actually talked to, Randy Conrad earlier, and Randy Conrad, obviously a throwback to the great Farina teams of Leiden, and from when I talked to him at the Kona tournament last week, he was like, "Yeah, I'm near the end of my career. I want to see us get good again. Bang! This is the guy I wanted." And I mean, he didn't just give him a head coaching job; he gave him an assistant AD job plus a teaching job. So, if you're in Kading's shoes, you can't turn that down. Now, on the plus, and on the plus side, though, for Mount Carmel, you turn around and you get Alex Sertzis.
Right, who landed him? I wasn't sure if he was going to be on staff there or not, but he landed himself a teaching job at Mount Carmel as well. So
and a great coach,
he's,
and still,
obviously he's been of course he
Indiana
with overtime and the regional training center.
yeah,
So
the RTC.
he's been around. He's been around too. So they'll be fine.
Well, and you have to look at it, and it's a total win-win for Mount Carmel in the sense that the connection between them, as a private school, and the Indiana connection. I mean, let's face it, Jake Tucker. It on the one hand, you lose a John Kading, but then on the other hand, you pull in an Alex Sertzis, and it's kind of like, okay, well, you didn't really miss a beat here.
We've got it. Well, and that's that's to be expected. We have no shortage of great coaching in this state. So sooner or later they all come over to our side.
Yep. Okay. Now again, let's go to Class 3A. Obviously we know, Lockport's good. Oak Park River Forest, almost kind of like a jump back to last year where they faced a lot of adversity early in the season. But again, come the end of the season, we're loaded. And it's a little bit more wide open, but you still got Oak Park River Forest, Lockport. The rest of the schools, I don't want to say a little bit behind. I mean, I know Lyons Township will still be good. Marmine Academy, obviously, still very good, despite the loss of that that core of guys. And
I think we're in a situation where, you and I were fortunate to do the 3A finals.
Yes.
Together last year, and that was an all-star meet all by itself.
Sure.
When you look at the fact that I think I mentioned on the broadcast that something like 17 or 18, close to 20 of the finalists were in my national rankings that I do for Win Magazine, and you had just one weight class out after another where both wrestlers were nationally ranked. And but of course, we lost a lot of those guys.
Sure.
I think we're in a situation where really to say where some of the legacy programs are. That Sandberg is rebuilding. They went to the Conant tournament to try and build up some of that confidence for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
You know that Glenbard North is rebuilding. I mean, last year I think they had something like 5 returning starters, and that was it. And they by the time the holidays came around, they were comfortably into the top 10 in 3A. This year, only about the same number. It's going to be a tougher climb for them this year, I think. Get that high up. Right now, they're out of my top 25, and I don't know if that's ever happened in the 30-plus years that I have done rankings in Illinois. There's certainly lots of season left to go, and they certainly have a major opportunity, build some momentum by the time February rolls around. But when you look at the fact that they lost a match at the Folk Quad, they lost to Batavia, only finished 6th at Conant. They still have a long, long way to go, and I think that's the case for a lot of the of the legacy programs. They're going to be trying to gain momentum as we go on through the season.
Yeah, and hopefully this weekend you'd all get a chance to look at Montini, because I really don't have a handle on what their lineup is. Obviously, we know who their tough guys are. And speaking about Glenbard North, obviously you got Gomez and Assad, both who are,
right,
outstanding individuals. Speaking on the DVC, because Glenbard North finished 6th at Conant, Wheaton North finished 4th at Barrington. I'm wondering how much of the gap that Wheaton North has closed and how close that's actually going to be, because not only do they duel, but the DVC actually has a formal tournament. And Wheaton North is actually coached by a former Glenbard North wrestler, Travis Cherry, who was a standout for them. So it really should be interesting how that plays out.
Well, we'll find out in 2 weeks when they wrestle each other. I think Wheaton North has closed the gap all the way. If you want to know my opinion, if you look at the way Wheaton North has upgraded their schedule, their record's not going to be great. It wasn't great last year, but they opened against Deerfield and Stevenson in a quad that also included Prospect. They're going to be in the Lockport duels. They're in a lot. Of course, they were at the Moore Prettyman.
Yeah.
They'll be at the Dvorak again. Wheaton North is wrestling the kind of schedule that's taking them I think, to a permanent spot in the top 10. And I think you're going to see them there before very long. And I think they're going to beat Glenbard North. That's my prediction.
Okay. And going to 3A overall, okay, besides Oak Park River Forest and Lockport, who else do you see in the mix? We know Mount Carmel's still pretty good. Providence Catholic is up there too. Lyons Township, still pretty decent program. Montini, like I said, I don't know yet. I haven't seen them, and I don't know where the holes in their lineup are. But how is it playing for you? Would you look at 3A?
Well, if you look at the top 10, the 2A editions, Mount Carmel, Marion Catholic, Lincoln Way West, I all have all three of them in the top 10 at this time, and I think all of them are deserving. I think Deerfield, in terms of just pure depth, able to slot people in, and have guys in backup roles at multiple weights that could win matches, might be the second best program to Lockport. They're solidly top 10. I think you'll see Stevenson again be very strong. They made huge strides last year. Marmion's still a top 5 program. Montini's still a top 5 program. I think Providence is top 10 right now. Yeah, I think the top 10 or 12 programs have kind of separated themselves. I think Stevenson and Wheaton North are probably, and Lincoln Way West and Marion are probably at the bottom of that group. And then you start with, your programs like Sandburg and Lyons and Bering, and possibly Wheeling, started that second group of teams.
Okay. So just briefly now, looking at a national scene, we have still Blair Academy, the emergence of Lake Highland Prep, which is
I have them as a top 5 team at this point.
Yeah, they Palazzo, also a former Glenbard North wrestler, done a phenomenal job there.
And I must say, did a phenomenal job on your podcast too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he was very good. He was very good. And of course, Buchanan's still there. There's a lot of them. Don't know yet, but is there an Illinois team right now? Oak Park River Forest and Lockport that maybe has a chance of cracking that top 10.
Yes, I have. I am pulling up my preseason, the preseason top 25 here. Let's see. I had in my preseason top 25, I had Oak Park River Forest 14th. I had Mount Carmel 15th. Obviously, that's going to change now that we have real results. These were before a single match had been wrestled. But at that time, they were the only Illinois teams in my top 25. I had 5 from Pennsylvania. I had 5 from Ohio. But certainly Lockport has a great chance to get in now, depending on what happens in the. I'm not going to be releasing new rankings until after the Ironman, so there is an opportunity for a great deal of movement now. Possibly Marmion could get in, possibly Montini could get in. The last couple of years, I've finished the season with 4 and 5 Illinois teams in. Last year it was 4 3A teams plus Washington, which was a legitimate top 25 team last year. I do not have them part of the top 25 at this time. We haven't wrestled meaningful matches yet, except, of course, for the Lockport Mount Carmel match, which we've already talked about. But there's certainly an opportunity for 3, 4, maybe even 5 of these teams to make some movement into the rankings by mid-December.
Yeah, and I'm actually I'm not going to be able to make the Ironman this year, but I will be at the Clash, and I'm really looking forward by that point in the season to see how, because there's a lot of Illinois teams in the Clash, Providence for the first time, but both Marmion Academy and then Oak Park River Forest in a field now this year at the Clash that includes Lake Highland Prep, Buchanan's coming back, and St. Edward, which, dual meet-wise should be a great indicator for a lot of these schools.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have Buchanan 3, Lake Highland Prep 4, and St. Edward 5 to start the season. So
who's your number 2?
There's no reason to think that those teams will move out of those spots very far at any point before the Clash anyway.
That would be interesting to see, because I going back to last season, I would love to have seen the Oak Park River Forest team that was a dual team state finals back, when they were full and 100% back at the Clash in December. Of course, obviously that's a what if, but they were like 2 totally different teams.
Yeah, and no matter who, no matter what team or what event you're talking about, there's always going to be a million what ifs.
Well,
you look at the expectations. You look at the level that Oak Park established in 2014 and 2015, and when you compare that to 2016, when not everything went right for them and everything they wrestled over the course of the season, you think of that as a failure, and of course there's about 99 and 44 100% of the programs in the country that would love to have that kind of feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And just curiously, is Blair your number 1?
Blair is my number 1, and let me pull it up again here. Yes, Blair is my number 1. Graham is my number 2.
Okay.
Again, Buchanan 3, Lake Highland 4, St. Ed 5. Then just the rest of my top 10. I have Clovis 6. I have Bergen Catholic 7.
Yeah.
I have Bethlehem Catholic 8, Elyria, Ohio 9, and Wyoming Seminary 10.
Okay.
These graduation losses are just
they took
just so significant that I'm going to make them work their way back up.
Yeah, well, they did. They took a beating, and like Franklin Regional, which has always been like up there. They always have the standout individual, but never seem to have quite the depth, team wise to make it up there.
Right.
Clovis, I'm kind of out. I'm not convinced on yet. Buchanan, obviously solid. Like I said, that's why I'm really looking forward to the Clash with both Buchanan and St. Edward there, as well as Lake Highland Prep, to see how they match up. Lake Highland Prep. I mean,
Clovis
lot
does
of depth.
have Clovis does have 8 guys back from the state tournament.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's too early to say whether
Yeah.
6 is too high, but there's no way they're not a solid number 2 in California.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. In California, yeah, and of course the two big tournaments in California, uh, always kind of show. And I like the fact that some of the Illinois teams go out to that now. Like the Doc
Right.
Buchanan and the.
Sure.
So now what we've got coming up, and like we're saying, as the season progresses, obviously we have a couple of significant events coming up on December 3rd. Now, from what I heard, I got a text from Jason Sally saying that the quad, which used to be dubbed the Holy Wars, is not going to be at Montini. Supposedly it's being moved back to Mount Carmel. And I'm trying to get a confirmation on that. Yeah.
Because I had published in this week's issue that it's in Montini because obviously
and it was, and
it was on Montini's schedule as being hosted. But if they're at Mount Carmel, then that's obviously a change.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get a confirmation on that right now. I'm planning on attending, and then you have the super duels at Washington. Now, from what I understand, Oak Park and Washington may not be wrestling at that because they may be wrestling on a Friday the next weekend at the 6 Points Center, in a duel, and
well, there's plenty of other teams there for them to wrestle, and they only wrestle 3 times anyway.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, and that'll be a significant event. There's some other duels taking place. I know there's another super duel down south taking place, which obviously all of these will have impacts on the ranking, and we're looking forward to seeing the matchups.
Yeah. If I can, this is a significant mega duel weekend. We have the mega duels at West Aurora, where Hononegah and Libertyville and those folks are. At the north-south duels troll. And I'm just putting out the word to all of you that are listening. If you're at one of these events, we need your results. Either post them on the forum or send them directly to me so that that the rankings can reflect all those results. These are just huge matches. And this is a huge weekend for Providence, of course, because they're wrestling, they're hosting Marmion and Hononegah on Friday night, in addition to the quad that they have on Saturday. So that is a full weekend for them for sure.
Absolutely. That's that's definitely a full weekend. I would, and I would like to kind of echo what you were saying before, because people on Illinois Matmen constantly whine about rankings and this and that. Folks, send your results in. If you go to these things, send the results in. Rob is only one man. He puts, his email address out there. Send it in. Individual matches, dual team scores, give us the information. I mean, when I go to this stuff, I try and input as much as possible to include at Intermat and Flow Wrestling. But, decisions can only be made on information, and the more information we get, the better decisions we can make.
Let me just add to that. For the pretty much been the case for the last couple of years, and especially last year. My best information has come from the 1A folks. I don't think I had a dual meet last year involving a ranked team for 1A that I didn't have the box score sent to me. It's not quite that good if you're listening out there, if you're 2A or if you're 3A. And the people from those classes that are sending me info, you know who you are, and thank you. Keep doing it. But if you're a Chicago area 3A program that's not sending me stuff, and lots of them aren't, you know what you need to do starting now.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Josh Oster because I just made a simple statement about it, and he sent me an email with all 3 box scores from the Mount Carmel and their other matches against Manuka, and that's what we need.
Yeah, and I'll second that. If everybody, if everybody in the Chicago area was Josh, I wouldn't have a problem. Josh is the most reliable sender of box scores that there is anywhere.
And
so thanks, Josh.
Yeah, and that's what we need more of. And coaches, assistant coaches, parents, send us the info because again,
get your wrestling SID busy.
Yeah, and that's key for us to keep going. And I'm going to speak about the podcast here. This is something that I would like to do weekly with Rob and I was going to try and get Andre in here. He never made it, unfortunately, but we want to kind of do a weekly thing here, and we would love your input. And we want to focus on results, on predictions, and on, both, when I say results, past results from like the weekend, duels, significant results, and then upcoming events. And real quick now, looking down the road, Rob, we both look not just at the stuff in Illinois, like the Dvorak, and of course we got the Rex Whitlatch coming up at Hinsdale Central, but the big national stuff. We have the Cheesehead, obviously the Ironman, which is coming up in 2 weekends, the Clash, and a lot of teams now that are going out of state and participating in the big tournaments. And we love your input on all that. So, Rob,
certainly, it's fun to talk about those events because there is such a significant Illinois representation, and we'll certainly continue to do that. We'll talk about all the all the success stories, and there are going to be more of them at this year's events.
Yeah, and just to put it on, last year I went to the Ironman, and Montini, which showed up with like half a lineup, managed to finish high based on results of just a few wrestlers, and both Real Woods and Dylan Duncan had phenomenal tournaments, and Will Luan. And those are the kind of things that kind of play into the season. And that's the thing we want to focus on. And again, I want everybody's input from Illinois Matmen, people watching this. And we also want your input as far as results, things you want to see, so we can make this a better product, because both Rob and I, we want to boost Illinois wrestling, and that's our focus and that's our goal.
Absolutely. Okay,
so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up real quick, and I want to thank Rob again. Like I said, tonight we had we had to work out a little technical issues, but we'll hopefully be back next week. We want to try and shoot for consistency. So Thursday, 7 p.m. CST. We should have a lot to cover after what's coming up this weekend and during the week. And again, we'll do our outlook. And actually, next weekend with the Ironman coming up, I'm sure we've got a lot of stuff we can put out, going into the Ironman with all the Illinois teams and the nationally ranked teams going into it, and guys who have a chance, to maybe make a noise on the national scene and make a statement. And I can think quite a few right off the top of my head, but we'll cover that next week. So I'm going to say, Rob, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Hopefully we can get Andre's butt in here. And we'll keep going on with this. So everybody who is watching tonight, I want to thank you. And a reminder that this is going to be uploaded and archived on YouTube. So if you didn't see it live, you can always catch it archived. And I will be posting the YouTube link in the forums in a day or so.